Have you ever struggled to make change happen in your relationships, whether that's with your partner or your family or maybe even your coworkers? Well, today I'm going to show you 5 things that you can implement right now to be able to improve your communication and make change happen. And with that said, let's get into it. What's going on, family? My name is Justin, and I'm a therapist in real life, and this is another episode of Mental Caffeine. Today, the first thing I want to tell you about in order to be able to make change happen in your relationships is to remember to be specific about what the problem is. Lots of times, through no intentional fault of anybody's, we can be very vague in our descriptions of what problems are or what exactly it is that we'd like to see changed. Being able to say exactly what it is that needs to be changed can go such a long way in helping another person be motivated to put forth the effort required to achieve the change that we're asking for. So, as an example, if we were to say, I don't like how you are right now, you see how that's very vague and abstract? However, if I were to say, I don't like the tone of voice that you have right now, then that is a lot more specific and it gives us maybe a better place to start. But we can even go a little more specific and say, I don't like the fact that you seem very angry in your tone right now. That is a very specific and nuanced way of identifying a problem. And so by highlighting that, it not only pinpoints what exactly is the problem, but it also gives a starting point for the larger conversation that needs to happen between the two of you to be able to make something happen in the long term. So remember not to be vague, be very specific. The more specific, the better, because that gives us a place to be able to say we can go somewhere from here. All right, and with that, that leads me to step 2. Okay, family. And the second thing that we have to implement in order to be able to inspire change in our relationships, after we've become really specific about what the problem is, we have to then lead into a conversation about why the problem is actually a problem according to us. Being able to do this is not just about recruiting the other person to believe us or to share the same rationale or reason on why the problem is a problem. Instead, it's a lot more foundational than that. It's only really about starting a conversation. Lots of times, the people that we may say that are responsible for an issue that we're having, they may not agree. They may have a different perspective. It may lead into a disagreement, or it might lead into just acknowledgement of something that they maybe didn't recognize before. Either way, it leads into a conversation. And by leading into a conversation, then we're not venting, we're not just airing out problems. We're now engaged in a relational kind of element of our relationship. Okay, family, now that we've been specific about what the problem is, we need to then be able to go into a story about why actually the issue is the issue. And this is not just about recruiting the other person into our way of thinking. It can be that if you'd like, but that's not necessarily the purpose here. The purpose is to be able to create a story, a conversation around this issue here. And this is the difference between just venting and airing out a frustration and having an actual conversation and connection on the back end and being able to figure out how to work together to achieve more change and subsequently more fulfillment that comes along with that. So after we've been specific, we got to be descriptive on why actually the problem is the problem. And maybe they'll disagree with us. Maybe they will agree with us. Maybe we'll call something to their attention that they didn't recognize before. But no matter what, we're going to be able to have a conversation about it. And that is the most crucial element, being able to begin the conversation, the back and forth. And that actually leads us into the third element of creating change in our relationship. Okay, family, now that we've identified a specific problem and we begin the process of having a conversation about why that issue is an issue and open the door for connection and communication, the next thing that we can do is implement identifying alternative behaviors that are acceptable and that are more in line with the change that we would like to see. We've all been there. Someone is upset at us about something we said or did, and they want us to change, but they're not very descriptive about what exactly it is that they would like to see instead. So then we just guess, and sometimes we're right, but most of the time we're wrong, and that just creates more friction and tension in the relationship. So instead, when we're asking someone to change, being able to identify specifically what the problem is and then why exactly it is a problem, and then here are some alternatives that we can do instead, then that helps us be able to be on the same team as we're striving to achieve change and better this relationship overall. And that leads me into the fourth element of things that we can consider in order to make change happen in our relationships. Although before I get into these last 2 points, family, I really want to take this opportunity to invite you over to like and subscribe on our pages on YouTube and Spotify at Mental Caffeine on both platforms. Give us a like, give us a follow. It helps us out, helps us float the algorithm. And with that, we'll get right back to it. Okay, family, now that we've identified the specific problem and we've talked about why it's a problem and we've offered up alternative behaviors, the fourth thing that we can implement is to be able to highlight micro movements towards positive change. Have you ever had someone want you to change something, so then you tried your best to do that, but then they didn't notice any of the steps that you were taking? So then when you brought that up in conversation, it was like a non-starter, and then you become frustrated, and now you lost whatever motivation you had to change. So instead, when we're trying to inspire change in another person, after we've been specific, after we've described it, and after we've offered alternative behaviors, then the moment they even almost move to that, or the moment they choose an alternative behavior, or the moment they maneuver towards change, we have to notice it. We have to highlight it. It doesn't have to be a big conversation. You don't have to throw a parade, but being able to notice and being able to articulate the fact that you noticed helps the other person feel as if their effort is not wasted and it's not in vain. They're making these movements. And by doing that, by highlighting that, it again creates this ongoing conversation, but specifically from a framework of teamwork rather than two independent people doing completely opposite things. And so by continuing to notice little steps of progress, and as they get bigger, highlighting that, and continuing to do that helps change become more likely to happen. And that leads me into the fifth and the final thing that we can implement to be able to make our communication better and achieve change in our relationship. And the fifth and final element that we can implement is to remember to celebrate the milestones of change. Lots of times those little movements, they add up to bigger movements, especially over time and opportunity. And so when we get to a point where we can recognize that this relationship is in a much better place than it was before because of consistent movement towards change, then we can celebrate that and we can come together and say, remember how we were facing this issue before, and I asked you to make these adjustments, and then you did, and then I had to make some adjustments, and then I did, and now we're in such a better place. Being able to celebrate that, because that doesn't just mean that you accomplished the change that you were hoping to see. It doesn't just mean that you improve your sense of fulfillment and connection. It also sets the stage for the next conversation in the future that you'll have about what kind of changes you might need to see. And it also opens the door that your partner can then safely request change through following a similar format. By doing this over and over, you develop not only better fulfillment, but also better connection in your relationships. If you like this kind of stuff, family, please, again, consider giving us a like and a follow over on YouTube and on Spotify. My name is Justin. This is Mental Caffeine, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.